With T-Mobile for several years. Been helping out with the Agile transformation for the last few years. Currently with the digital development team. So we're responsible for T-Mobile.com, myT-Mobile.com, MetroPCS.com, the mobile app, and T-Mobile Tuesdays. Did anyone get their thanking yesterday? Got the T-Mobile folks? All right. So free stuff every Tuesday, T-Mobile Tuesday app. So those are the digital properties that we're supporting. So what I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about our journey, our story. And I love case studies. Really, my brain can only handle so much principles and concepts. So it's good to learn that stuff. I've got, I call it the concept quota. I can only handle so much before I have to go figure out how do we do this stuff, right? So case studies are a great way to hear other people's stories on how they're doing this stuff, right? So hopefully you get some nuggets from this, from our journey. There's also some other great ones. There's eBay. There's also, might be doing one on GE. So you're gonna learn a little bit about what surfing, Magnum PI, and trains have to do with safe transformation, okay? So it's at 5 o'clock. That'll be a great one. There's also one I heard of is just added. It's lean agile speed dating, and it's the story of how Ken and Barbie met. And wait, come on, people! It's my own material. There's not like a lean agile joke book that I can use. So, anyways, it's a good other good case studies out there. So go check that out. Okay, so you guys ready for some killer PowerPoint slides? I had some animations that I was going to do, but at Safe Summit, I heard that that's kind of not cool anymore. So it's just going back to bullet points and pictures. Hopefully that's okay. All right, so this is the agenda. So like many stories, there's a setup, upset, and reset. Okay, so the setup is in the beginning, okay? Then something went wrong, right? And then got better, okay? So that's what we're going to walk through. Then we're going to hit on kind of what's next for us and some takeaways. And if we have time, we'll do Q&A, but also be over here to talk as well. Okay, so we'll start out about 3 years ago. myT-Mobile.com went through what was called the digital platform migration. And that was basically an effort to modernize the platform for, we'll call it e-services. And that was about a 1 to 2 year project. It was run with Agile sprint teams. They were dedicated resources. We had about 10 teams. We were using CA Agile Central for that. I might refer to it as Rally because at the time we were using it, it was called Rally. So we still call it Rally at times. And so there's limited application of the portfolio management functionality within Rally. So primarily for authoring and executing stories, some attention towards features, but not a whole lot of usage of the portfolio management. But overall, that was a very successful effort. Here comes the upset part, right? But then it wasn't so good, okay? So what happened is once the digital platform migration was completed, we kind of went back into the existing waterfall framework or system that we had, okay? So our sprint teams were still trying to deliver agile sprints, but then everything around us was still waterfall, okay? So that meant the schedules were still about 6 to 9 months, work back schedules, resources were still were now assigned to the projects as opposed to dedicated persistent teams. Requirements documents were kind of just basically taken and tried to put into stories somehow and then get them off to the teams, right? So that's my frustration emoji. If you want the editor's uncut version, it's actually got a poop emoji, but playing it safe here. So then the other thing that was, as a result of that, the Backlog Health is very, very hard when you're just taking requirement documents and trying to get them into stories to have a consistent backlog. Months to do requirements, design. Timelines weren't really based on capacity planning. Team morale was low, and it was really a lot of trying to push the rock uphill. Or I got a picture of this Lego dude trying to push a golf ball in the grass, which now that I look at it, looks like he's going downhill and it's been mowed, so it's probably easier than pushing a rock uphill. But anyways, it was not easy, right? So here comes the reset part of the story. We changed things, right? So we realigned our resources to teams, okay? So particularly with product development and test, so kind of reconfigured our sprint teams to be more agile scrum teams. Then we had a big emphasis in working with our product management team on focusing on having a roadmap, okay? So a vision, a roadmap, and features, okay? So it wasn't just about mytmobile.com has these big projects coming at it, we got to get them out the door. It's, do we have a vision for what mytmobile.com should be as a website, right? So if customers want to come in and they want to upgrade their plan, or they want to add a line, right? Or they want to make a payment, okay? What is our vision for that customer experience beyond just, here comes a big project, okay? So a big project would be something like tax inclusive, which we launched this year. So plan pricing now includes taxes, so you don't have to play this game of trying to figure out what your bill is going to be. Okay, so that's a big project. It's good. It's helpful for you all. But we still have a vision for the website. Okay, so that vision should be translated into a backlog of features, right, and a roadmap. Okay, so there's a big emphasis on shifting from just here's a big old requirements document and then get them into stories to here's a vision, here's a roadmap, here's features. Okay. The other thing that we did is we started maturing in our understanding of how to use CA Agile Central. So they started rolling out more and more functionality, started learning more about it, so portfolio items, capacity planning, release tracking. Okay, started digging into those a little bit. And really is going like, where are they coming up with this stuff? Like, what is this bigger time box that they're calling a release? And I thought you just had sprints. And so started digging into that. And realized a lot of the underlying principles for how they were shaping the tool came from Scaled Agile Framework, okay? So started learning a little bit more about that. And along that line, really wanted to learn from others as well, okay? So a couple things that we did. Part of our account with CA Agile Central included support from the Agile Success Program. So they have coaches, and they're able to help a lot in understanding, okay, where's this stuff coming from? What do you mean by safe? I don't understand this larger release. Why did you build it around this larger release, right? So they're very helpful in helping us understand that. We also got invitation to come visit the big room planning for CA Agile Central. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that was instrumental in being able to see other people put it into practice. We learned more about SAFE, so we've done a lot of training. We got some certifications for coaches. We did about 120 product owner, product managers training. Did about 100 plus dev and architecture. Recently we just did training for some of our directors and vice president within digital dev, just to understand really how do you scale a lean agile, right? So that's part of what we learned. And then in June of last year, we did our first big room planning. So how many folks are familiar with big room planning? Anybody not? No, everyone? Okay, well, all right. We got at least one guy, so I'll explain it for you. Don't be embarrassed, it's okay. So big room planning does come from Scaled Agile Framework. It's the program increment planning, okay? And essentially, it's face-to-face collaboration at scale. Okay, for a team of teams, right? So for mytmobile.com, we had about 12 teams. As I mentioned, the coordination amongst the teams was really challenging, dependencies, all those things. So we went after it, and we really focused on getting alignment between product, technology, and architecture. Get a clear vision and roadmap for the quarter. And so when I was talking about the roadmap, it's not just about your product roadmap, it's also your technology roadmap as well, and how are they complementing each other? What does technology and architecture need to do to get out in front of what the business wants to do to enable that? So it really helped get alignment on that. Identify and coordinate your key dependencies. So that's a big part of it, right? Is you got all these teams, they're dependent upon each other. They need to talk to each other, right? They need to work it out, okay? So that's the general idea. You can see a picture there. That's our first big room planning. That was back in June. The other part of the big room planning is you're trying to address, mitigate, and accept your known risks. Okay, so there's part of it's called a roaming session, where you're basically deciding what are we going to do with these risks we've identified, and then you're coming out of it with a committed set of team and program objectives, okay, and a plan that you believe you can actually achieve based on capacity. Okay, so some of the key outputs that you'll see, I've got some screenshots here. This is out of capacity planning, NCA Agile Central. So if you're not familiar with this, definitely encourage you to check out the demo. I saw it right over there. So for us, this really changed everything, because having a conversation around prioritization that's based on capacity it's math. It's supply and demand, right? It's like gravity. It's really hard to defy. Okay, you can argue subtraction, but not very well, right? So you've only got so much capacity for the quarter, right? We're using quarters, so don't get hung up on that. But we only got so much capacity for those teams, right? And you've got this set of features that you want to get done, and you know the size of them, and so you do the math and say, okay, does this fit in this box or not, right? And so with that, you're able to have the conversation around trade-offs, prioritization, and so forth that we just weren't really able to have very well before, okay? So you can see the allocation across the teams. You can see if individual teams are being overloaded based on what features they're going to be working. You can also just see overall for the program how it's looking in terms of overall capacity. The other thing that is an output of this is release tracking. So once you go to start execute the plan, this is essentially your program board. So you're able to get a view of the progress of the features. You're able to see what features are being worked in what sprints by what teams, dependencies. You can also look at what issues you might have. So for example, if you have stories that are in one sprint, but they're dependent on stories in another sprint, you probably should get the stories that you're dependent upon done first, right? Otherwise, you're going to have some problems. So flags that for you. So we're maturing in our usage of release tracking, but it's a very powerful view into progress and problems for the quarter across a team of teams. Okay. All right. So wins from BRP. So hashtag winning. If you look that up, Charlie Sheen's probably going to come up, so that's in the uncut version. But for our version here, I got the baby. Well, he's not a baby, he's a kid, but he's winning. So some of our wins were the teams have a much better understanding of the product context and vision for the quarter and beyond. So this was huge, right? So prior to this, our sprint teams, if you went and talked to a developer, a tester, and asked them like, well, what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on these stories. Okay. Well, how does that tie into some of the overall business objectives that the company has? I don't know. Okay. So this is really powerful to have business, technology, architecture lay out that vision, that roadmap for the quarter and beyond for everyone, right? So now I know not only what I'm going to be working on, and I'm part of creating the plan for it, but I also know why and how that ladders up to the overall vision and strategy. Okay, so that was one of the huge wins we had is teams, realizing why they're a part of this work, right? So much better alignment and morale between product architecture and dev. So before that, those type of conversations and trade-offs, roadmap, and so forth, it's really easy to kind of have those off to the side, kind of have your separate lists and everything. And it's very hard when you got multiple lists of things that you want to do and prioritize, but you don't really know about it, but you know it's there, right? So this forces everybody to be on the same page in terms of here's what we're going after, here's our priorities, right? And we're on the same page, okay? So it's kind of like Thanksgiving dinner, right? You got everybody at the table, right? You got to pass the taters, right? Nobody's like stuffing like croissants in their pockets over here and like taters in their back pocket, right? You're all at the table. You got to share the meal. You got to work it out, okay? So if you haven't seen Christmas Vacation, it's a good example, right? They're all at the dinner table, and you got Uncle Eddie, and you got Clark, and you got the dog yakking on a bone. I mean, it's messy, right? But they got it worked out. So you guys need to watch Christmas Vacation. It's a good movie. Maybe I should do the clip next time. Okay. So the other thing is increased accuracy of commitments based on capacity. Okay, so part of it is you have a confidence vote. How confident are we in the plan that we just came up with, right? So if everybody doesn't have confidence in the plan, we need to go back and do some replanning, right? But it's all based on that law of gravity, supply and demand, math stuff we were talking about earlier, okay? So better coordination amongst the teams. So as those teams are talking to each other, working out their dependencies, right? It's a lot harder to say, like, well, we didn't really know what they were working on or when. Okay, well, you better go talk to them, right? Now you know. Culture of collaboration, innovation, and fun, right? So that's a big thing, is bringing them together. Technology, product, architecture. Did a hackathon for the first time. And you know, we had some games and stuff in there. There's lots of ways that people in big room planning are encouraging that culture. But for us, it was huge, right? Okay, so some of our learnings. This is how I thought our first one was going to go. We're gonna drive the boat up onto the rocks, but we didn't. We avoided the rocks. It was our first one. So now we have a template that could be used by other teams. This might be obvious, but there is a lot of preparation that goes into this. Okay, so one thing that is key to this is, you know, I guess it is like anything. You really need to. You can't just show up and do it, right? You want to have that roadmap, that prioritized features ready to go before you go into BRP. BRP is not just showing up and now we're going to come up with a plan, right? There's about a quarter's worth of work to get ready for your BRP. You know, there's lots of logistical stuff. Leadership, support, and presence from product dev and architecture is essential, right? This is kind of hard because a lot of times they're used to getting pulled off into different things, right? So that's still something that we're working on, but it's absolutely crucial. So training for the various roles. So I mentioned a lot of the training that we went through. So the first time, we didn't really have a couple days set aside out of the sprint to train people for the first BRP. So we kind of just went ahead and did it. You know, kind of learning as you go can be a little rough. So the second one, we came back and in safe concepts, there's innovation and planning sprint where you actually have time to do things like training. So we took that time to run a lot of these folks through that training. That really helped get us better prepared for the next BRP. Okay. So what's next? So looking at how do we scale this outside of within digital development more, but also outside of it. So one of our big things that we still need to do is figure out how to pull in some of our downstream dependency teams, okay? So we learned a big lesson last time because we had our BRP, and we tried to get some of our downstream dependent teams to be a part of it, and they didn't really come. So about a day after the BRP, we kind of showed them like, hey, here's our plan, and they're like, that's not really part of our roadmap. Okay, so then we had to go back and replan, okay? So a big part of this is that face-to-face collaboration amongst dependent teams, right? So if you don't have that, you're gonna get so far, but not very far, and it's gonna be, you probably have to do some replanning, okay? So that's one of the things that we're working on next. So I mentioned some of the other digital dev properties that we're looking to try and roll this out to, tmobile.com, the app, and some of our frontline systems for retail and care. And then outside of digital dev, we have what's known as the Agile Studio that's helping drive digital transformation across T-Mobile. And so they are leveraging Agile Central to try and scale this out across T-Mobile. So there's about 3,000 active users right now with CA Agile Central, and there's hundreds of teams and backlogs. So it's big, right? So they've got a big task. The other part of what we're doing is large programs are using it to provide better transparency and better execute their work. Customer journeys is something that we're also working on. And then there's Agile Central Clarity integration that's also in progress. Okay, so those are some of the things that we're working on next. So key takeaways. So it might be about as valuable as this box of fat-free mixed nuts to you, right? So you can take it or leave it. But you probably heard this before, but agile transformation is tough, right? It's a long haul. Leadership support is crucial, right? So lead by example. One of the things that I feel pretty strongly about is embedded coaching is really helpful. Where I've seen a coach come in, or lean agile transformation coaches come in, just kind of help a couple teams get set up, and then they move on and they do what I just did. You trip, right? So so we've really invested heavily in having embedded coaches for the long haul, right? Because what we find out is that they may get it, or they don't get it, or they get it for a little bit, and then they kind of just fall back to other ways and other pressures that are around them. So we are really investing in having coaching that's embedded with the teams for the long haul. Okay. So you've probably heard this common theme. Jimmy was hitting on it today. You just got to push forward and make progress, right? It's not easy. You just keep pushing, right? Continuous learning, inspect and adapt, right? So that was a big part of it for us getting going with our first BRP. Is I thought it was going to be the boat on the rocks, but you know what? We'll put life jackets on and we'll throw people off the boat if we're going to hit the rocks, but we're going to go for it, okay? So some of the key takeaways for you. Based on the show of hands I saw earlier, it sounds like many of you are already on this journey. Possibly some of you are further along. If so, you can come talk to me. But how will your team scale? What approach framework will you use, if any, right? There's a lot of them out there. What tools will best help accomplish this? So a little hint that sticky notes doesn't work real well for distributed teams, okay? And many of us have that. Some cases just within our own building, you've got teams in multiple locations. So sticky notes can work great just to get going, to get the concepts. But if you're trying to scale it and you've got distributed teams, you're probably going to need some type of tool, okay? So who's helping you? I mentioned embedded coaches that we have, but I also mentioned the Agile Success Program. That's been a great help to us as well. I think that's pretty much it. So.